And joining us now on Unpacking It, one of our favorite guests, broadcaster Dave Pasch. He does play-by-play for ESPN, college football, college basketball, the NBA. He's also the voice of the Arizona Cardinals. He is a husband and father of 3. Dave, it's great to have you back on Unpacking It. How are you?
Hey, good, Bryce. Always good to be on with you, man.
Well, we appreciate it, and I want to start just kind of with some recent changes because you're now doing games back in arenas again, which is nice. So how has the transition back been, and what was it like doing those games from home really for the last year?
So still doing some games from home, but definitely more travel. It feels a little bit more like normal where, you're in the arena for NBA. We're doing the FCS championship game on site. So we did a spring football game on site. It's still not the same without the fans, and also our broadcast location for basketball. We're not on the floor like we normally are. So it still doesn't feel completely normal, but yes, we are traveling a little bit more. The home broadcasts have been, I guess I'm used to it now. So I've done so many between football, college basketball until the Pac-12 tournament. Bill Walton and I did all of our stuff from home, and NBA, again, a good part of it has been home. So the home has been the norm. I'm used to it. I figured it out. It's not, it doesn't do any good to talk about the things that you can't do because we're all dealing with the same stuff. So it's just you're trying to get through it, and hopefully this fall for football we're doing everything on site, but we don't know for sure yet.
Very cool. Well, so what was the setup for you then? Like, did you have to convert a room, and what ended up happening for you to be able to do that?
Sort of like it's in my office, so it's actually where I am right now. Like if you watch on TV, the backdrop behind me is pretty much like the camera's right in front of me here. So we have a monitor, we have a laptop. It's basically you're broadcasting over Zoom.
Wow.
It's amazing. Nobody even knew what Zoom was a year and a half ago, and now we're doing games. We're doing NBA, college football, college basketball, Major League Baseball has been doing games from home. So it's I can actually have for a college football game, I can have my spotter on site, and through another Zoom actually have like my spotting board up. So here's like a spotting board. You can have that up. He can point, and I can see it on a computer in real time. So it's crazy how they figured this out. All the people at ESPN that are amazing with their skills in terms of technology. I mean, they adjusted really fast last summer to pull this off. So it's remarkable that we got on the air. I mean, thankfully it's all set up for me, because if I had to do it, I'd mess it up. So I just leave it. Like when the game's over, I get off the Zoom, I unplug my headset, and that's it. Because I don't want to hit the wrong button or pull
I love
it.
That's cool. Oh, you froze. Oh, there you are. Okay, cool. No, that's awesome. So then what has the rhythm of life been like? So we kind of going back to this last year of being home more, because normally, you got multiple games a week on the road. So what was that change in kind of lifestyle a little bit like for you and your family?
Well, in a lot of ways, it was great. I got to spend more time with my kids. One of our daughters is home. She hasn't been able to go back to college, so she's been stuck here. My wife and I have been able to spend more time together. I think she would also tell you that, I've messed with her routine a little bit. And so it's, and she's great and handles it well. But when you have a routine for so many years, and, I try to chip in and help out as much as I can. And sometimes, that's not the best thing to do. Right. So, but it's gone well. We've enjoyed it. It's, like I said, with traveling now more, we're kind of getting back into that flow that we've had as a family for so long. But it's been, especially with my son, who's a freshman in high school, I think it was important for me to be home a lot more, being able to take him to school a lot more, and just being around, just him seeing my face. I think is a good thing.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great to hear. So then, now that you are getting back into more travel, I've got a funny thing because you tweeted about it. As far as you put your shirt on backwards, what was the story there in the airport?
Yeah, I was waiting. I was waiting for my flight to Dallas. I think I was going. I can't remember where I was going. New Orleans last Sunday. See, I can tell I'm traveling more now because I forget where I went and where I'm going.
That's right.
And somebody he was kind of looking at me, and normally you don't think anything of it at first, but then when it's a few times, you start thinking, okay, maybe they, because I don't get recognized like a lot of people do at all. It's very rare when I get recognized, but when you do, you kind of figure, okay, they're going to ask about Walton, or it was just after the draft. It was the day after the NFL draft, so maybe I'm in Phoenix, so maybe somebody asked about the Cardinals. So he kept kind of looking, and then he starts to walk towards me. So you just kind of prepare yourself. Okay, well, what's he going to ask? And he had a British accent. I can't do it very well, but he said, "Sir, I hate to be the one to tell you, but your shirt's on backwards." Or I'm sorry, he said your shirt's on inside out. Sorry, inside out.
Inside out. Inside
And
out.
I looked down. I'm like, oh my goodness, how embarrassing! And I had a huge tag. The reason he knew it
Oh,
was I had like a huge tag. So the tags, on the back, sticking. I mean, how many people had to have noticed? There were a
oh,
lot. The airport was packed. Not that everybody's staring, but you're in line to get food, so everybody's kind of waiting for their food. They're kind of looking around, people watching. So I ran into the restroom, changed it, came back out. He was still there. I told him, I said, "Sir, thank you, taken care of."
oh, that's tremendous. Gosh. So that shows you a year off the rhythm. You got to get get your game back, get that
Exactly.
travel game back. Very cool. Well, all right. So kind of even bigger picture, but having looked at this last year, maybe reflecting on this last year, I know I have. Hopefully all of us have in some way. As you now start to recognize a level of normalcy, what are some of the things that you hope remain changed, or some of the lessons learned throughout this last year that you hope to implement more, and even mentioning, hey, you want your son to see you more and that kind of thing, but how does that play out? And so what's that like for you to reflect
Yeah,
on?
it's a great question, Bryce. Obviously I've thought a lot about it. I think trusting God is where, I feel like over the past year, probably had to trust him more. I think we always have to trust him. It's just maybe we don't realize it,
Mm.
or I don't realize it. Need to be hit over the head sometimes. And I think I have. This past year and a half, just you can't put your faith in things and banking on things being the way they were. This past year has taught us that if we haven't been taught that before, this year is a great example of, there's nothing that's routine, right? There's nothing that is guaranteed to stay the same except God. So, I think I've been able to dive into that, my relationship with him a little bit more. And I think the wide range of emotions too, sometimes we think we can't come to God if we're upset with him, or, we're frustrated, or we have questions that maybe there aren't answers to, or we know we're not going to get the answers to. And, just be remembering that, God's there for us. He's there for us wherever we are. And so even if there's things that aren't going well in our personal lives, or in our work situation, or with our families, God's there. And that's something I've always known, obviously, but just feel like has been kind of a flashing light to me even more here in the last 15 months or so.
And so what does that do, or what does that mean when you say, okay, God is there? What does that kind of lead to? And I imagine, speaking about his presence, and it's
Yeah.
unpack that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, trying to stay in the word more, prayer more. But I also think it's, just a trust, right? There's, I've heard it said, and I think it's a great way to put it, that, faith is a channel of living trust between you and
Mm,
God.
mm,
And so your faith is stretched when you trust more,
yeah.
and you have to trust more. And so I think that's, not trying to control everything, not trying to get, and I say trying because that's a struggle for me, trying to control things. And so relying on him to work in your life, work in on your character, work in the people around you. You're forced, again. It wasn't just my routine that's changed; it's my wife's, it's our kids. So, it's been challenging for everybody to adjust and adapt. And I think that's also a thing where you trust God, because you're in a situation where, because you're around each other so much, and this is really the case for every family in America for at least an extended period of time last summer, you know, I mean, just look at what happened with a lot, the divorce rate went up. I mean, there were so many things domestically that got worse because we are around each other more.
Mm,
You would hope that when you're around each other more, things would get better.
mm,
And for us, they did, but it was because of trusting God, working on the relationship, and knowing that something happens, you get into an argument with your spouse, you and your kids don't see eye to eye on something, that's where you go back to God and you trust Him, you work on those relationships, and know that when you come through that time, we come through that season, that the relationships are stronger with your family members and the people you love because you're also in a stronger relationship with God.
mm. Amen. Amen. He's there to give us guidance. He's there to give us direction and peace and strength to handle those situations. So man, no, I appreciate that perspective. That's awesome. And kind of mentioning your kids as well. Uh, what kind of season of life and how do you see maybe your role as a dad at kind of the three stages that your kids are at right now?
So our oldest is in Los Angeles. She's trying to be an actress, and I
Oh wow.
think one of the things that she's experienced is because there's just not much going on. She's been able to develop some other friendships and relationships, and because of what I was saying before, how not every family came through what we went through last year and even into this year unscathed. Right,
Mm,
the divorce rate went up, the suicide rates went up,
mm,
domestic violence went up, alcoholism went up because there was a lot of depression. People were out of jobs, people were stuck. It was for a lot of people a very hard time. And I think my daughter has been able to build some relationships with people where she's been able to mentor them. And I think she's also maybe appreciated too, um, that her dad and her mom were always there for her. She's, got a lot of friends where that's not the case. And things for them got worse during the pandemic from
mm,
a family standpoint. I think our middle child, who's a sophomore in college but has been stuck here at home for the last year and a half, I think she's been grinding away, working and still going to school. But she's had to adjust to us, and we've had to adjust to her.
mm.
Our son, again, who's a freshman in high school, he's been in school most of the time. And just me, again, being around, being able to cultivate that relationship at a very important time in his life. High school is a different deal. And he's actually had a really good year. I'm not saying he wouldn't have had a great year if my schedule was normal, but I think me being around and just again to talk to him, picking him up from school, having those conversations, even if they're about something that's on his mind that has nothing to do with spiritual things. You're just there for him and just trying to be a good dad. And I think too, being in he sees me reading my Bible in the morning, sees me praying. I mean, those are all things that we can tell our kids, hey, you need to do this or you should do that. But when they see their parents doing it, it becomes real to them. They say, okay, my dad isn't just somebody who says, hey, it's good for you to pray. It's wise for you to pray. He sees me doing it. So I think that's another thing too, where if I'm traveling, he's not going to see me as much, in that environment.
Oh, that's wonderful, and it's true that kids learn and they grow when they see us. They see it in action. We can't just say things for sure. Well, you mentioned your son and kind of this stage with him. When you think back on how your dad and your relationship with your dad, what are some of the similarities and differences in your approach to fatherhood compared to what you saw growing up?
My dad's he's still alive. Praise God. I mean, he's a great father, not a
Mm,
believer. Great father, set a great example to me as a man of integrity and someone who worked very hard. Someone that pushed me in a good way to make the most of, my abilities. And so, I think just knowing that he was a steadying presence. My parents got divorced when I was a senior in high school, so that was a difficult time
Mm.
but he was always steady. He was always kind of the same. He didn't show a lot of emotion. He still doesn't show a lot of emotion, but I love my dad to death, and he is a great person and a great father. And so I think one of the things that I've gleaned from him is just trying to be a steadying presence for your kids, just reliable. You're there, you're around, you're available to them. And so that's definitely something that I've learned from my father.
Amen. I love that. Being available, how valuable that is. Well, Dave, I appreciate you sharing all of those things, faith wise and family wise, and of course you're so tapped into so many different leagues and sports that you're a part of as a broadcaster. So I wanted to talk about a few things, and so first off, to me, this kind of slipped through the cracks a little bit in regards to the college football playoff expansion and kind of the possibilities surrounding that, because we quickly shifted gears to the NFL draft. But what do you make of some of these conversations out there, and for you calling bowl games and being very engaged with college football, and now even doing the FCS playoffs, which, so I'm an App State guy. They used to always be in the FCS, and I witnessed all the playoffs. So I saw how it works with 16 teams, and I loved it. But anyway, what do you make of that, and from your perspective as a broadcaster, especially?
It's interesting you mentioned App State. The last time I did the FCS championship, which at the time was Division 1AA, was 2005 maybe, and Appalachian State was in it back then.
Yep.
So I remember doing those games. I mean, I'm excited. I've got the FCS semis and then the championship. It's fun to be a part of a playoff. And the more the better is the way I look at it. I mean, I'm not saying college football needs to go the route of the NCAA tournament where you have that many teams, but I'd love to see college football at the FBS level go to at least 6, where 2 teams get a bye. I'd love to see 8. I think even 16. To me, it doesn't diminish the regular season. I understand the people that think that it does, but to me, all you're doing is you're enhancing the regular season, because I mean, just look at the expansion of the NCAA tournament. It's I know there's more games in college basketball, so maybe it's not apples to apples, but you're still talking about bubble teams all year. It's still
True.
a conversation. If you went to 100 teams, you'd still be talking bubble teams. College football, if you go to 8, if you go to 16, all season long, you're going to be talking about bubble teams. And if you go to 8 or you go to 16, you're not out of it. The one thing that I don't like right now is that it feels like it's all about the playoff. So if you go to we did the Fiesta Bowl this year. Like if you go to the Fiesta Bowl, but you don't go to the college football playoff, and you're a school like Ohio State or Oregon, and the Pac-12 hasn't been in the playoff, it's almost like it's been a bad year. It's a disappointing year. Well, there's only 4 teams. There's no guarantee because you win your conference, you're going. It's not a bad year. It's not a disappointing year. So it's almost like the playoff is one thing and everybody else is like in this other group. So you expand the playoff, you bring everything a little bit closer together. The regular season becomes more important. And if you lose a game, your season's not over. If you don't play a strong schedule and you lose a game week 1, you can still be a great team in November, December. So I'd love to see expansion.
Cool. I'm right there with you. Absolutely. And along those lines, this year, the NBA experimenting with this play-in tournament. And so I'm guessing kind of your similar philosophy in regards to more teams are now care and are competing until the end.
Absolutely. I know a lot of coaches don't like it. You've probably listened to some of the broadcasts. Jeff Van Gundy isn't a big fan of it. Mark Jackson, not a huge fan of it. I like it because from a fan standpoint, it's great. There's just more games of importance. And if you're a team, look at Washington. A month and a half ago, Washington was a team that nobody talked about. And in a normal season, that would have been the case all year. Russell Westbrook would be having this phenomenal year. And you wouldn't be talking it in the context of, and you got to beat him twice in a play-in tournament to keep him out of the playoffs. I mean, look at the Lakers and their fall from grace because of the injuries.
Yeah.
What if you have Steph Curry against LeBron James in a 1-game situation to get into the NBA playoffs?
That's
Again,
awesome.
I know that, right? From a fan standpoint, yes. I understand why some coaches don't like it. I understand why LeBron doesn't like it. I wouldn't want to be in that situation either. But from a fan standpoint, and ultimately, right, this is about serving the fan. The fans are the ones. TV is the reason why these salaries are so high. So I think it's great. I'm excited. It keeps teams from tanking. It's been great.
I'm right there with you, and I appreciate your perspective on the fans, because our ministry is all about the fans. So that's our perspective, and I think sometimes we forget about it. That I appreciate LeBron voicing his opinion, but it's like, come on, LeBron, this is the fans are the ones that drive your salary, and so some of the things are funny to hear from. Well, actually, I was thinking about Kyrie Irving today. That same kind of mentality, where he doesn't want to speak to the media. It's like, come on, that's part of the deal. We're the fans. You gotta listen. You gotta speak. We're listening. So anyway, no, I appreciate your thought on that. And then, all right, so you're also the voice of the Arizona Cardinals, and so I'm curious how that fan base is feeling right now. A decent year last year, but is there a complete buy-in to Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury? What's kind of the atmosphere down there right now?
I would say if you polled the fans, you listen to the sports talk shows here in Phoenix, I would say they've bought into Kyler Murray for the most part, but not yet Cliff. I look, the Cardinals should have made the playoffs last year. They were 8-6. They were 6-3 and ended up finishing 8-8. They had a bad home loss to San Francisco, and then it came down to the last game of the season in LA against the Rams. Kyler got hurt in the game. They lost to a backup quarterback, and your season's over. So it was a disappointing finish, especially after the Hail Mary against Buffalo, and you're 6-3. You're thinking, with an added playoff team, a new format with the NFL playoffs, you're getting in. And they didn't. So I think because of that, it left a foul taste in a lot of people's mouths about the coaching staff. Not as much Kyler. And I'm not saying that that's how it should be. That's just how it feels here locally. So this is a big year. I think it's a big year for everybody. It's year 3 for Cliff. It's year 3 for Kyler. And I think there's definitely cautious optimism because you saw the growth of Kyler Murray, but you also see some areas where he still needs to grow, and he's young. And everybody's hopeful that he takes those steps. If he doesn't take those steps, because ultimately in the NFL, it's all about your quarterback. If he doesn't take those steps, if the Cardinals have a bad year, if they don't make the playoffs, I mean, who knows what happens after the season? I just think it's a critical year for everybody.
It really is, and I'm curious from your standpoint. You get to do national NBA and college football and college basketball. What keeps you still connected to the Cardinals and still wanting to be the voice of the Cardinals? Coming up on 20 years, right? Is it already 20?
It'll be 20 this year. Yeah, it's crazy. Crazy.
Wow.
Bryce, it was tough this year, obviously, because we weren't traveling. We were doing the road games from the home booth. You're not around the players. You're not around the coaches. So I missed that. I missed training camp, being able to, talk to people. I missed being able to go down to the field before the game and connect with Steve Keim, the GM, or the coaches or a player. That part of it, was gone. I hope that we can get back to that. I enjoy being a part of a team. I enjoy being able to root for a team. When I love my job at ESPN, but it's a network job. So you're not rooting. You don't have a rooting interest. You're doing the games that you love to do. But the Cardinals is unique, and obviously I've been around them now for 2 decades, so it's become your team. So I live and die with it. I get emotional during the games.
It's great.
And it's been fun, for the family too. I mean, the kids have grown up in it, so it's not just me. The family's a part of the Cardinals. So it's something that, I look forward to and enjoy very much.
Absolutely. No, that's neat. I appreciate that, some guys, the goal is to be a network guy, and it's not about the local teams anymore, but for you to be able to get the best of both worlds, that's pretty neat. That's a neat opportunity.
It's great.
So I want to ask you about 2 coaches. So first, Urban Meyer is somebody that you called games with when he was at ESPN. He was a part of kind of your broadcasting crew. Now he takes over in Jacksonville. What do you think about that? What maybe will be the toughest transition for him going from college to pro?
I think the only thing that'll be difficult for him is getting used to losing.
Mm.
And I say that because everybody loses in the NFL. It's not like college football. You're gonna lose. And
He's never
losing,
lost. I mean, college football, he never lost.
I know. And if you lose one game, that's one of the reasons why he stepped away, right? The
Yeah.
losing was so intense and it wasn't healthy in terms of just, how it hit him. When we saw that, we saw it at Florida, we saw it at Ohio State. So it seems like he's in a good place with it and understands that you could go 11-5 and have a great year, right? But 11-5 is hard for somebody that is used to 12-0 or
Yeah.
11-1. 10-2, not good, right? In college football for someone like Urban Meyer. So how's he going to do when you're 11-5? Well, now he's taking over a franchise where you were bad. You were the worst team. And now you're building around a young quarterback. I just think if he can adjust that mentality, and I don't know that he can, right? I mean, you're asking somebody to change the way they've done things. And I think that's a hard ask. So I'll be curious to see. I think he'll do well just because he's a great coach and he's a great culture setter. And he'll work with Trevor Lawrence. It'll be a great relationship. I think he'll succeed, but I am curious to see just how he does when things don't go well this first year, or maybe even 2 years down the road.
It's going to be fascinating. And then you mentioned, Trevor Lawrence being there too, as far as never losing either. I mean, he's not going to be used to it. So that's going to be very, very intriguing. The other coach that you saw, up close and personal, so to speak, was Bruce Arians, having been the head coach in Arizona. What did you make of him, going to Tampa Bay, and then in year one with Tom Brady, they win a Super Bowl? Were you surprised by it? What did you think?
It's funny. I said we were in the bubble. I remember we were having dinner with the other announcers in the bubble. We were talking about Bruce Arians, and I said, "You watch BA. It won't even be week 2, and BA is going to call out Tom Brady. He's gonna call out Tom." And he did. He did. I think he did it after week 1. But Bruce Arians has a way about him. He is the ultimate, scream at you, yell at you, call you out, and then love you. He's got a great way with players. BA just has a way about him. It's not fake. He is who he is, and he's not ashamed of it. I mean, he's who he is. He's he goes hard. I mean, you see it, right? Having a cocktail. He wants his coaches all gone at 5:00 so they can be with their families, have a couple drinks, be around their kids, go to their kids' events, and get back in the office at 9 the next morning. It's not rocket science for his offense. It's not like he's, adjusted it the way other teams have. Jason Light, the GM, used to be here in Arizona as well. Todd Bowles is an excellent coach. I think deserves another head coaching opportunity. So I thought the Tom Brady, Bruce Arians fit would work. I really did. I wasn't surprised. I actually thought they'd go to the Super Bowl this year. Not surprised at all. Yeah.
Wow. And now, I mean, they got to be the clear favorites to do it again. I was shocked that they were able to bring everybody back. To me, it's almost been like an underrated story. I'm blown away in today's world where everybody leaves all the time to bring all 22 or more players back. Incredible. What do you think of that?
You look at the history of Bruce's coaching staffs. They don't usually leave. He doesn't usually fire guys. And I think he is big. Again, it's like a family. Bruce is very good at bringing people together. Again, he's not fake. What you see is what you get. People appreciate him. They may not always love being yelled and cussed at, but like they appreciate that. And when you see it on the field and you win, I think you want more of it. You want to be a part of it. He's not going to grind you to death. He may wear you out, but it doesn't get old, if that makes sense. Like you look at, I think people maybe here, after a while, maybe it did. It did feel like here it was time for a change for him and for the Cardinals. So I'm not saying like this is going to last forever there in Tampa, but I wasn't surprised at that everybody came back.
Gosh, yeah, no, it's impressive. It's a cool perspective on that. That family atmosphere that he's been able to establish there. And then you plug in Tom Brady, and it's remarkable. All right, last thought, Dave. Really appreciate you being a part of Unpacking It today, and always love to kind of end on a spiritual note. So for you, you mentioned having more time in prayer and in the Word, just as things kind of slowed down this last year, being home more and that sort of thing. And so, what are some of those things that maybe you've been studying or learning that you can share with our audience today?
It goes back, Bryce, to what I said earlier. I think is the greatest challenge for me. I think it's a great challenge for a lot of men. We want to control our lives. We want to feel like we're in control. And when this hit March of 2020, none of us were in control. Yet I still tried to control everything, right? You try to control your job situation, you try to control your family, you try to control your schedule, and you can't. So it's just learning to turn things over to God. And again, trying to keep in mind that he's there. Like, you're not burdening him. He's not surprised that you're struggling, or he's not upset that you're stumbling. He's there with you. He gets it. He understands. And so that has been a great reminder for me that God cares. He loves you. He wants that intimacy with you. That's why he came. That's why he paid the penalty for our sin, to be with us. He wants to be there. And, conversations that I have with friends of mine, or relationships that I have with people in the business, I think, that are not believers, I think that's the hardest thing for them to see sometimes, is that, when we talk about being Christians, it's about a relationship. That God's desire isn't for us to follow a bunch of rules, to try to make ourselves look good, or to try to measure up, because we can't. It's about his love for us, demonstrated in Christ, and us receiving that love, being willing to receive, and then understanding that it's, when you're in a relationship with somebody, that they don't walk away from you. When you struggle, when you fall, when you're tempted, God's there. He's always there. And I think for a lot of us as believers, it might have felt hard over the last year to sometimes feel, I know for me at times it did, to feel like he's there, that he's in the pit with you. And so it's just been a good reminder through prayer and Bible study, but also just through circumstance, through other people, just seeing what they're going through. Remember, God's there with them. And so it's encouraging when you hold on to that, when you cling to that. And it's a struggle. I've got to remind myself of that. And that's why you just keep going back. You keep going back to the Word. You keep going back to him. And he's there. He's waiting. He wants that. He's not burdened by it. And I hope that that's something that I take from this for many years, and hopefully people listening, and people that, that don't have that relationship, or maybe they've started the relationship and they don't quite understand God's character and his nature. And it's just, I think that's the essence of being in a relationship with him, is knowing that he loves you and that he cares deeply, and he wants you to share, even if you're mad, even if you're frustrated, even if you're hurting, he wants it. He can take it, and he welcomes it.
Amen. What a wonderful, powerful, simple message. He's there. So we will leave it on that note. And Dave, thanks again, man. Love having you on the show. Appreciate your heart and perspective, and keep up the great work. We'll be watching you. FCS championship coming up, NBA playoffs around the corner, and the play-in games, and the regular season wrapping up, all that coming up. And so we'll be keeping an eye on you for that as well. So really appreciate it, and look forward to the next time we do this.
Thanks, my brother. Always a pleasure.
All right. Thanks a lot. There's Dave Pasch joining us here on Unpacking It.